Okay. Well, Joanna, thank you so much for being here today and giving me your time. I want to talk to you today about a topic that has been top of mind for me. You've done recently a webinar on the topic of habit and how to build habits. So I want to talk about first how to build habits, and then second about a practice that, especially as we're going through isolation and this global pandemic, I think there are some silver linings from that, and I want to dive deeper into a practice and then how to make that into habit. So there are a number of books out there on habits. The one that I read a couple of years ago by Gretchen Rubin, I actually have it here, Better Than Before. I will link it down in the video as well. There are so many talks. I saw last week, Ray Dalio is also put a note around habits and how to build great habits. And I think he mentioned building good habits, it's going to get you to your upper you. I'm paraphrasing, but something along that line. So with all of these resources out there, and I thought you're the best person to talk to us about it. You are an EQ certified executive coach, wealth of wisdom on this topic and so many other. So can you give us a crash course on how to build great habits and maintain them?
Absolutely, Sarvi. Thank you so much for having me here. I think you're amazing, and I think you're such a role model for all of us in what you are doing in developing these habits and creating space for people to have these conversations. So first, huge thank you to you. I love that book. Gretchen Rubin is one of my favorites. I saw her at a leadership conference. I couldn't agree more in developing those better habits. I think right now, as you mentioned, in unprecedented times, we're starting to notice some new things about ourselves. Some good habits are forming, like maybe we're doing some yoga online. And sometimes we're using AirPods that pop out of our ears. I'm just gonna have to adjust for that. Can you hang on for 1 second? It's
absolutely.
Gone right across the room here.
I think this is real life, right? This is the scenario that we are all facing these days, right? Working from home, doing conferences from home. This is the reality.
I'm just glad I wore pants today. Let's just say, in these times, yeah, maybe we're watching more yoga videos online, doing the workouts from home, or maybe we're now drinking more boxed wine, as they said, in processed food. So, it's like the good and the bad are happening. But habits, are really interesting because they explain, says the research, 40 to 50% of our behavior. And basically, what is a habit? So a habit is something that I do over and over again, whether it's a thought or an action. I do it so often that it just becomes subconscious for me, autopilot, if you will. So things like brushing my teeth, going to bed, etc., are habits. And during this pandemic, I've just started to raise consciousness to both the good and the bad habits I've created. So there was an opportunity to donate my time to develop a webinar on it. And I thought, who am I to develop a webinar on habits? Lots of people have better habits than me or what have you. But then I realized, so I'm in the business of leadership development, and I support people in being their 2.0 level self, building that better version of themselves. And I think what's really, really interesting about this time that is extremely challenging is that it's also creating an opportunity for a new normal and what that could look like. So I thought, when you go to a workshop and you take a leadership topic, it's a check the box, and then maybe you choose to use some of it or you don't. But here's an opportunity to say, if I were to take one thing that's really of value to me and practice it, maybe it can become part of my DNA where I don't even have to think about it anymore. I just become really, really good at it. And so I developed something called the Habit Builder, and I've posted it on my website, which I'm sure we'll provide the link to, Sarvi.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, great. So it's a free online tool, Habit Builder, and it starts with building belief of yourself. So you have done great things. Each and every one of you have done incredible things. You have, been good to a family member. You've been good in the community. You've done acts of service in your work or helped another with an empathetic ear, for example. There are lots of things that will help you build that belief to know that you can develop a new habit. So I've gotten people to list the things, 3 characteristics about themselves that, help them remember your value. and then to actually think through your habit. What I want people to think about is, what do I want to develop? How? Get specific about it. Make it time bound. Make it, really specific, so you know exactly what that's going to look like. Like, for example, if I'm trying to move from micromanaging to coaching, then perhaps the how is going to be that in every meeting I have, I'm going to ask more open-ended questions, at least 5, before saying my opinion or responding. Maybe it's something as specific as that. You've also got to make it kind of juicy. You got to make it exciting. And so I have motivators and motivator ideas. If you are developing a new habit that just sounds terrible to you, then what's the point? So you got to make it exciting. For me, vitamins is a big thing. I know I need to take them personally for my immune system. I've got some things going on, so I have to take those vitamins, and I hate doing it. There's so many, I don't like it. But I drink it with a soda stream that I have, and I put just a little bit of mango juice in it, and it makes it so delightful. And that's the time I reserve for having that juice. So I make it so delightful to take my vitamins, my new habit. And then it's helpful to look at the habit loop. So all of this comes from the inspiration of Charles Duhigg, James Clear, Gretchen Rubin, Brene Brown, you name it, to think through in a very simple way, one new habit, one thing that you're going to do differently that's going to lead to an even better life for you and contribution to those around you as well.
Amazing. I think I will actually, I didn't notice that is on your website, the Habit Builder, so I will make sure to link it. I'll do it actually tonight myself. I like the point that you raised around almost rewarding yourself as part of, so for you it's your vitamin and you're using your soda stream and then adding a bit of flavor to that, which I think I read somewhere, to build habit, it's cue, practice, and then reward. So kind of looking at that entire cycle of building a habit.
Exactly. It's got to be motivational. One of the motivational factors I have found is that with Mel Robbins, who counts down from 5. She's like, it's so simple, but it's true. And I've used it for probably the last year. And when I know that I need to do something, like go for my run in the morning, which I've been doing at 6:30 every day. This is a new thing for me. Is I'll go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I don't negotiate, and I go. So that's the motivational piece. And then the reward is I wait to have my coffee. I love coffee. So I have my coffee with my oat milk after that, and I can't wait to do it. So it's really motivational for me to go.
Absolutely. What are your thoughts in terms of, because I also heard this context of this concept of accountability partner almost. I know I did that for my meditation. Our coach told us, make sure you have an accountability partner. How are you thinking about that? What are your thoughts, especially in the context of work? If there is something, if there's an area of opportunity for me at work, if there's something that I want to make into a habit, how should I have that conversation if you agree with the concept of accountability partner?
What a great question, Sarvi. In that book that Gretchen Rubin wrote, Better Than Before, she does speak to your point. And so I love that you're bringing that concept forward about how most of us are actually extrinsically or externally motivated. There are very few of us. I hate those people, just kidding. But there are some who are just so motivated to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning every day to do their exercise, to eat their green vegetables. We all know what we need to do, but it can be tough sometimes, and these are unprecedented times, as everybody keeps saying, but it's true. And it can be really tough to do those things that we know we're supposed to be doing. And I just want to give a shout out actually to those who are observing Ramadan and people from cultures who would normally have the opportunity to convene right now and get together, and who are not being given those opportunities of support and observance or celebration right now. And there are so many examples of that. So in that stead of needing, that collaboration or that accountability and being externally motivated, I think it's hugely important. And one of the examples that she gave about going to the gym, for example, was about giving somebody else one of your shoes, and you have one of their shoes. And then when the morning comes and you want to press that snooze button, you look over and you see that person's shoe and you're like, wow. So in the business context, what we can be doing, I think, to hold ourselves accountable is having an accountability partner. I think there are lots of opportunities for that. I know a lot of leaders right now, especially, are doing morning check-ins. And often they're doing the check-ins with the group, not just on the logistics side or the technical side of things, sometimes these morning check-ins are more just like, how are you? How are you actually feeling? And creating a culture of cool for people to actually be honest about that and to be able to talk about it. So I think what we're doing is we're creating more space for people to ask for what they need, to ask for support, an accountability partner or support from their manager, to be able to share, you know what, here's a goal that I have, and I want to put it out there that this is my goal so that you hold me accountable to it. And with loving support, even in the workplace, we can be doing that. And I know I have a lot of accountability circles myself. We all put out there the one thing that we're working on right now. We do it in the form of WhatsApp, and each different workplace or leader can do their authentic brand of this, but certainly to put it out there what it is that we need or what our goal is, and to get that feedback and somebody who's watching, because it definitely helps us to motivate us, especially when people catch us doing something right.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that idea. I remember one of my friends and my former colleagues at my previous workplace, Janine, and I'm going to say her name because I know she'll be watching this. She used to, before meetings, if she had a big presentation, and she gave this tip to me, would say, for example, hey, Sarvi, this is one area that I want to make sure that I'm working on to improve. So as I'm presenting, make sure you pay attention. And immediately after, then she would check in to get the feedback. So it was this creating accountability, making it into a habit for herself to improve, and also that kind of closing the loop and having that check-in. So I love that idea because you can just constantly improve yourself. And I think based on what I'm hearing from you, that's the way to create a habit.
Absolutely. I think you are very much impacted by the people you choose to surround yourself with. And I know that I feel very blessed and lucky to surround myself with you, Sarvi, because I know you hold me to a higher standard and motivate me every day. So I think it's exactly that, choosing good people who inspire you and will hold you accountable in the most positive way, or the way that inspires you the most, is really helpful.
Absolutely. Now let's dive to the second part of the conversation, which I know you are definitely an expert. I think I actually learned a lot about empathy and the concept of empathy from yourself throughout the years that I talked to you. But again, back to everything that has been happening globally for the past 6, 7 weeks, and even longer for some of the other areas, there are some silver linings. And to me, what I see is this level of empathy that everyone shows, whether it's in personal or in professional. I mean, we are in meetings and suddenly someone's kid start crying, and then immediately everyone else is like, that's okay, you go attend to your kid, we're going to carry the rest of the conversation, we'll handle this. It's just, there are so many these micro beautiful moments that are happening that I don't think a couple of months ago even I would have thought about it. And I know developing that empathy, especially when you are in the middle of the business and priorities are coming up, I'm the first person to say it's easy to forget, and I try to hold myself accountable, but it is a habit that I want to develop more of and make sure that it is top of mind. So, I mean, there are so many examples of it, right? Even at the global level, I think everyone now talks about New Zealand Prime Minister and the her leadership style, which is completely during this crisis was based on empathy. Can you talk to me more about how can we make practicing empathy into a habit that we carry over into as leaders or as individual performers into the business world?
Absolutely. This probably is my favorite topic. And I too want to give a shout out to Jacinda Ardern. What an incredible leader.
Absolutely.
Quite possibly the best, I must say, particularly during this pandemic and beyond. And, the reason why I say that in particular is because perhaps it's a little bit easier to show compassion when you yourself are not suffering, or when things are rainbows and Care Bears and unicorns. But she hasn't experienced this before, this 39-year-old incredible leader who's also in this pandemic, who has a fairly newborn at home, and who has taken a cut to her salary purposely, and has exerted level 4 emergency requirements, a total lockdown on New Zealand until I think it was Monday, where it went over to level 3. So to exert such strident measures on a community who's unaccustomed to that, to not only help her own people to flatten the curve, and also to have that empathy for the surrounding islands and communities who would just not be able to withstand the pressures on the healthcare system that they would face if New Zealand weren't to do this. So wow, what an incredible leader. I also just want to give a quick shout out to Helen Clarke. So we're all standing on the shoulders of other people who helped us be here today. And Helen Clarke was the Prime Minister, I think it was for 9 years, of New Zealand. And Jacinda actually wrote the foreword to this book. And what another wonderful example of somebody who fought constantly for inclusion, who thought about other people and their rights. And empathy to me boils down a lot to inclusion, making people feel comfortable, and having the courage. This is what empathy means to me. Having the courage to feel with another human being, which can be tough sometimes, because sometimes we're just trying to stay afloat ourselves. And as leaders, not only do we have to take care of ourselves, we also need to be thinking about our people and what they need, and having the courage to do that. So how do we, especially when times are pretty tough, keep it at the forefront to be in service of others, to feel with others and make it safe to share their stories? I've got JoJo's 5 practical tips on being empathic or empathetic.
Yeah.
And what I want you to listen for is, because Sarvi, you in particular, you're such an empathetic person. So you're already doing, sorry?
I hope so. I hope so. I think I still have a long way to go. It's one of those things that it's hard to always keep top of mind.
Well, I think you do. And I think that it's also incredible to be thinking about, how can I continue to practice it? So no matter where you're at right now, I'm going to meet you where you're at, where your audience is at, in terms of your capability or skill set right now on empathy. Here are 5 things. And as you're listening to the 5 things, perhaps something in there will spark interest in you to say, you know what, I'm doing that well already. Or maybe that's the thing that I could improve or practice and bring to the forefront of my mind. But one of the things I would say is to be empathetic, particularly as a leader. We need to actively listen with empty hands and an open heart. Mm-hmm. Empty hands, because what we do as leaders is we tend to come in wanting to help that person solve their problem solving. And so we have solutions in our head. We've been in that situation before. We know the tools, et cetera, et cetera. But when we listen with empty hands, we can actually listen right to the end of our fingertips and let that person speak it out until they have no more words, or till the tension starts to release from their body. So that might be one area of practice. The second thing is to really acknowledge. That could be in a simple, yes, eye contact. Show your interest. It could be in mirroring the language. So one of the key things that we can be doing to show empathy, how do we actually do it, is if somebody is talking about something that's frustrating, they're using the word frustrating, it's at the right moment when you feel, you've taken the cue, it's now your turn to say something, to show that you're tracking with that person, to use their language to say, that is frustrating, or that sounds really frustrating. And if we say, oh, yeah, you seem really angry, the person's going to know we're not tracking with them. So use their language that they're offering to you. 3 is to encourage more openness with gentle, open-ended questions. So the person might say, I'm not well, or things aren't good. And to perhaps just share a gentle question like, tell me more about that if that's comfortable for you. Or maybe, how did that make you feel? But for leaders to create that space, often we get into this, we're too busy to talk about emotions, or that's too yucky sticky. But it's exactly what we need to be able to do to still the mind, to open up the prefrontal cortex, to be able to think rationally. So creating that space and asking those open-ended questions that are gentle are really helpful. The 4th thing would be to position asking for help as a strength. Mm-hmm. So it's making it such that I want to know how best to be in service right now. How can I best support you right now? Because sometimes people just want you to listen. and creating space for that. Sometimes people want advice or they want a tool, great, but let them define the kind of service that you can be in for them. And if you really want to build a culture where it's okay to ask for what you need, you got to model the way as a leader. At some point, you've got to share a little bit of your heart and ask for what you need as well. So that brings me to my final piece of how do you actually demonstrate empathy. The fifth one that you could develop a habit around is actually that you need empathy to give empathy. And as I was thinking about, I think about empathy a lot. And I was thinking about like empathy, almost like the T of empathy. It's really tough. Everybody talks about you can't pour from an empty cup. You can't provide empathy to, when you have an empty teacup. So what you got to do, you got to breathe. So, before, during, and after, there's an opportunity to breathe through the experience because you're having the courage and vulnerability to feel with another in their space. So you got to also breathe through that because you're going to take on some of that to an extent and take care of yourself with the proactive, the during, and the after as well. So as you're thinking about, okay, how might I build a habit around this? It's thinking through one of those things or maybe something else from all of the great, thought leadership on this. Brene Brown is a huge, huge leader in the space, and think about what of those 5 things or others would be really helpful for me to do as a habit. And if I keep practicing it and make it visible, so for example, breathe, or for example, creating a schedule for checking in with all of your people and turning on your video camera so that you can actually see how people are doing and build up that trust. Whatever you choose to do, whether you use to put into a habit builder or any other way that you choose to do it, is to keep practicing that so that you don't have to remind yourself to keep it at the forefront. You just naturally start doing it. Because if I learned nothing else from YouTube, it was a little boy who once said, you get very, very good at whatever you practice. So choose wisely, pick the habit or the action of empathy that you want to get very, very good at, and you will.
That's amazing. I love all of those kind of 5, if I may call them, principles that you have around empathy, especially the first one that you said, open heart and empty hand. I think a lot of time it might be, I know in the past I made that mistake when I was especially more of a junior leader that I just started. So that transition from being an individual performer to now becoming the person who is now, my entire job became inspiring them, helping them, supporting them strategy, is not to take action and more of like help and guide them. So really going there to just actively listen and empathize and let them bring themselves to that solution. So I love this open heart and empty hand.
You are not alone in that. I have to say that was exactly how I started out as well as a manager. And I think it's that you want to be helpful. The intention is beautiful. The impact is not always what we're intending it to be. And so I love that both you and I have experienced that and have evolved to realizing, there's such a power and a strength to coming at it with these empty hands.
Yeah. I think that level of authenticity and being transparent is also important. As we were talking in the first part of this conversation around even just saying that this is what I'm working on as a leader and this is the area that I'm trying to build into a habit. So hold me accountable and help me. That might be a good way also.
I love that, Sarvi. That's exactly what I've asked my people for, is when I go back to that micromanaging of trying to help too much, I've asked them to do a signal to me to let me know that I'm micromanaging, and so I can rein it back in and choose open-ended questions instead.
Yeah. Also, I think like empowering them, right? I think by you even framing it that way to your team and the teams you had, it just empowered that team to know, hey, they can also come and educate you on something. So something I tried past couple of months is if I schedule a meeting or if I'm reaching out to someone, I genuinely is because I want to learn something. So I ask them, can you please educate me on this topic? I don't have as much knowledge of it and I need your expertise. And I thought what I saw is people coming more open and they actually get excited to teach me something about an area that they have expertise that maybe they didn't have exposure enough to kind of come and them being the teacher.
I love that. I always think that, the teacher is the student.
Yeah.
in every way. And I think that mindset is really helpful. Thanks for that reminder of that.
Absolutely. So Joanna, I feel like I can talk to you for hours and hours. You just have your wealth of wisdom on any topic, and you've been so gracious throughout all of these years that you came to a number of different seminars that I hosted, and every time it was a lineup of people just to talk to you after every talk that you did. So if people want to go and just learn more about you or reach out to you, what are the places that you recommend them get more information about you?
Yeah, so I think a really direct and personal way would probably be to connect with me on LinkedIn. I love it when people reach out and share what they know too. There's so much wisdom being shared and a lot of empathy examples out there today is of that offering. So my Habit webinar is free, the tool is free, that's all on my website. So I imagine we might link that, but it's kirkeleadership.com. Kirk has an E at the end of it.
Absolutely. Again, thank you so much for your time. I'm so grateful to have you as a friend, as a coach, and accountability partner for all the habits that I'll be developing.
Thank you so much, Sarvi.
Thank
My
you.
best to
Have
you.
a great day.